Mike Tomlin steps down as the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach after 19 long, hard seasons of being the head coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, ending his reign and run with the Steelers with an 193 win, 114 loss, 2-tie record over 19 seasons. He's never had a losing record in a season ever. And he's won a Super Bowl. Did he win 2? I think he won 2 Super Bowls. Yeah, I think he won 2. Right? What a run. 19 seasons, Super Bowl win. Okay, so he won one Super Bowl. Right? And, I saw this news on my phone and I was like, listen, guys. After I saw the Texans absolutely destroy the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, I was saying this in my group chat. I don't care what could happen. I'm talking about what should happen right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers should have fired Mike Tomlin after the game. Hell, they probably should have fired him a couple years ago. Probably should have, right? But they didn't, right? Clearly. And he's had a lot of success in the postseason and having winning records. But the thing for people who are clamoring for him to be fired was because every time he gets to the wild card, he loses. The team sucks. They don't play up to their standard. The standard is the standard, apparently, which is losing in the wild card for 8 straight years, pretty much. And now it's come to a point where people are like, all right, like, how many more years of this? But he didn't get fired. He's stepping down, which means that if a team wants to hire Mike Tomlin, they would have to trade for him in order to have him as their head coach. They can't just have him as their head coach and then things be all good and dandy. So they would have to trade for him. Which is definitely Mike Tomlin helping out the Steelers because the Steelers pretty much, they gave him this opportunity. They kept him around. And, he's loyal to the organization and he loves that organization. He's been there for almost damn near 2 decades. So he's doing this as a favor for the, not a, kind of, maybe a favor, kind of, but like the organization liked that he is stepping down instead of being fired because being fired means that it was our decision to fire you. Stepping down is your decision to kind of fire yourself. In some way, shape, or form. Yeah. I think that's exactly how you kind of put it. So, Mike Tomlin, a winner. The next team he's gonna go to is going to be a winner, I believe. It's just that with the Steelers, when they are one of the premier organizations in the National Football League. And when you have a coach who's getting success in the regular season, that then becomes the standard, right? And then you have a coach who has made playoffs a bunch of times, right? That becomes the standard, right? So when the standard for almost a decade is be good in the regular season, be good enough to win out your division, be good enough to get a wild card game, be good enough to, sneak in at 9-8, right? That's fine. But when it's repeated, that is now the new standard. And we just cannot have that standard there. Especially for the Steelers, who are a premier organization, like I said, and who've had a lot of success. They expect these things. They expect Super Bowl trips. They expect deep runs into playoffs. They expect being able to get over a hump, right? It's one thing where you have a down year, right? It's one thing where you mess out on the playoffs, you go 8-9, 9-8. Okay. Out of 1 year, out of maybe like 6 to 7, that's fine, right? But when it's repeated after year after year after year after year after year after year, it's the same thing. Wild card loss, wild card loss, wild card loss, wild card loss. Didn't make playoffs, still winning record in the regular season. Wild card loss, wild card loss. Like, at some point, The brass wants to get over the hump, and they want to be able to try to go further than that point that they are perpetually going to be stuck in or have been stuck in for a minute, which is what the Steelers were in. They were in a perpetual state where every time they've made it to the playoffs within these last 5 to 6 years, I did not believe that they would win a single game. And they didn't. They have not. So I think it was time to fire Mike Tomlin. I think it's good to get a new voice in the room. I think it is very helpful to get a new voice in the room. And I know he's a good coach, and I know he's helped teams perform really well. But there was also some stretches where his teams would just play really bad against really, bad teams. Which is crazy. It's like we always have that one-off, right? But it almost seems like when these things start to become a pattern of how you are performing and how the team is as a whole, it falls on you at some point. You can also say it falls on coordinators, it falls on the talent itself, right? But he is the one constant in pretty much this whole entire thing. He's had different coordinators, and the same result has happened, right? Wild card loss. 9-8, didn't make playoffs. Always a winning record in the regular season, which is phenomenal, by the way. I think any organization outside of 3 would love to have Mike Tomlin as a head coach right now, and they'd fire their head coach to get rid of to bring in Mike Tomlin. They would love to have him. I think Mike Tomlin on the Giants would be fantastic. It will bring stability to our organization, which is what the Steelers loved about their coaches and then love it about their organization, that it brings stability for them. They don't want to have to rehire a new guy within 2 to 3 years. They want to, if they're going to pick a coach, they're going to have him for at least 10 years. That's how it feels. And, he finally stepped down. I felt like it was time a couple of years ago. He didn't get fired. He's stepping down. Which is ultimately similar thing for me. It just matters about the trades and stuff for the teams. But overall, I think this was the right decision. I think the Steelers need to move in a different direction, have a different voice in the room. And the organization ultimately wants to get over the hump of losing in the wild card year after year after year after year after year. It's always cool when you win regular season games, but when it comes down to playoffs, those matter a lot. So you're going to have to win some playoff games in order to stay. And if Mike Tomlin was winning some playoff games here and there, I guarantee you that he still would be the head coach. If they were winning some playoff games, if a couple years ago they went to an AFC Championship game, if every 2 years they went to an AFC Championship game or divisional round, I promise you he would not have been fired. Or he would not be thinking about stepping down because he's giving the organization what they want, which is going further than just making the playoff and then losing immediately, right? No team wants to do that. So he's giving them more of that, which is why he probably would have stayed if they would have made an AFC Championship game here and there. He probably would have. No losing seasons, which is phenomenal. But the organization ultimately got tired of winning in the regular season and then losing immediately in the playoffs and getting embarrassed in these playoff games as well. Not even just losing, getting fucking embarrassed. So Mike Tomlin, one of the greatest head coaches of all time, if he never comes back to coach ever again, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. If he does decide to coach again, a lot of teams will be clamoring and firing their coaches to bring in Mike Tomlin and potentially have stability for their organization for many, many, many years to come. That's my take on it. I think this should have happened. I think he should have stepped down or have been fired. I'm kind of glad to see it now. The Steelers fans could kind of breathe a little bit. Just trying to bring somebody else in to try and rebuild this organization into what it once was, which was Super Bowl contending teams. Especially with the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last 5 years, nobody ever has thought that this team would be competing for a Super Bowl. Nobody ever has. So I guess bringing a new guy, a new face, a fresh locker room personality will definitely bring some new life to that organization and potentially bring in new offensive coordinators and, have new GMs and get new players and build the roster that he wants to build and have his culture. But the Steelers culture is the Steelers culture. I feel like Mike Tomlin has left a great impression on that organization. And I feel like a lot of coaches are just going to try to refill his shoes, which could be a good thing, but also a bad thing. Because they will always be compared to Mike Tomlin and how good they had it when they have their first 6-11 year or 7-10 year. They're going to be like, oh, Mike Tomlin would never, But that's going to do it for me. Shout out to Mike Tomlin, one of the greatest head coaches of all time, but I think it was time for him to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys all for subscribing. Please like the video. Please subscribe. Like our live streams. We're going to go live almost every day. We're going to have UFC streams when UFC starts back up in about 11 days. So we're going to be streaming the divisional round playoff games. We're going to have a great time. So thank you guys for watching. Subscribe and like, and take care.